Hi, guys. So happy you could be here with us. I'm so thrilled to be joined by Nicole Zettlemoyer with us, who is a veteran and an Air Force spouse, a current Air Force spouse. And she's also a business owner who owns Wreaths by Nicole P. We were having the best time talking about how your business came into fruition, Nicole, because you were telling me about how you kind of went viral before you even had a bona fide business. So, first, welcome. And then, second, let's talk about that a little bit and tell people about your business.
Yeah, hi. It's happy to be here. And yeah, I started just making these for funsies in July of 2020. COVID, not much to do, and the Air Force had just switched over their uniforms from ABUs to OCPs, so like those sea green ones to like the army looking ones. And I was like, what do I do with my uniforms? And because I was still active duty at the time, and I went home on leave, and my mom and I just kind of assembled this shoddy looking wreath. I have the picture on my website. It's atrocious looking, but
Probably
everyone
not.
was but everyone was like, "Oh my god, you should sell these." I was like, "Nah, right." So, I'd sell onesies, twosies here and there, and in December of 2020, one of my friends from home, her family sent me some uniforms from 1947.
Wow.
And yeah, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, don't mess this up. But uh, when I finished them, my one coworker who was working at the local news station was like, I want to highlight you. I want to highlight these wreaths on our local news station, Ken's Five here. Sure. And I thought it would generate a few more orders. And then the interview went well, and she was like, "Hey, we sent this out to a whole bunch of news affiliates across the country." And I was like, "Oh, that explains why I'm getting an email from like Raleigh, South Carolina, or like Dallas, Texas." And then the next day, People, I believe, was the first one to reach out, like People Magazine. They reached out to me and they're like, "Hey, we want to do an article about this." And then Fox News reached out to me, and Late Night with David Muir. I think that's ABC.
Wow.
Yeah, and then CBS a few weeks later, and that one's my favorite interview. They did such an awesome job with that one. And so, yeah, I kind of went viral overnight. And uh, long story short, I had to learn how to become a business very quickly, make a website really quickly, assemble this wait list really quickly. And after 2.5 years, I finally finished my wait list of 2,000 people. And uh, so for the past year, I've actually been like working as like a normal small business where I have to advertise and network and all these kinds of things. And so I'm kind of playing catch up on how to be a real small business because it's just
In the
kind of
middle of being pregnant, by the way.
yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. My son was born on October 3rd. So last year or year and a half ago. He's about 20 months old. So yeah, I was pregnant with him while I was doing all this. And now I'm pregnant again, and she's due at the end of October. So yeah, October
And I
babies.
and I love to hear it, Mia. I love to hear that you know how you were like just thrust into success and then you had to catch up. And we were kind of chatting tongue in cheek that COVID was actually silver lining for you because you were stuck at home and you had nothing to do outside. So you were able to finish the read. So happy that
Yeah.
went.
Yeah, I was still active duty at the time too. So, that was like a big like, oh my God, I can't run a business and be active duty. But yeah, because the majority of our time was spent at home. I worked, and then when I wasn't working, I worked. Yeah, it was great.
So I mean, I also read your highlights. I hope everybody else goes online, reads it because it's really great. And I love, love, love your transparency because you were talking about how, it kind of happened all of a sudden, literally all of a sudden. And so you were having to balance everything. You didn't feel like you were doing a great job all the time with balancing the family life and the business life. And I loved your tips for military spouses regarding giving yourself grace, because I don't think that's something we do naturally for ourselves. And also having a backup plan. I mean, can you expound upon that a little bit for us?
Yeah. So, everybody, when you like join all these small business groups and all this kind of stuff, everyone's like, small business owners work 7 days a week. We never get time off. It's your business. And like, yes, but also like, no, that's not the whole point of owning a small business, isn't to like work yourself to the bone in order to work when you want, because that's not working when you want. So yeah, before I had kids and it was just me and my husband and our animals, I, I had a little more wiggle room in terms of like, okay, like, husband and I are spending an hour or two together, doing this, doing this, doing this. And I still had plenty of time to work and all this stuff. But once kids came into the picture, you know, I'm like, well, the whole reason I got out of the Air Force was to be a stay-at-home mom. So, or, was to not work, right? So I had to kind of juggle like how much did I want to put into my business versus how much did I want to dedicate to my family. And even at first, it was a really hard transition for me because like I had a kid, I got out, just had this business. So I really wanted to be like relevant and stuff. And it's a little bit of an identity shift. And, you know, I, this is going to sound really horrible, but my mom passed away in July of 2021 from cancer. And it kind of put a lot of things into perspective for me. I got out of the Air Force in 2022 in December, but I didn't know if I wanted to get out. That was a big thing. Like, do we stay mill to mill with kids? And, we decided we didn't want to do that. And, and the thing that I always remember is like, before my mom passed away, she was like, you and your brother are the greatest things I've ever done. And I'm like, you're right. Like, the greatest thing I've ever done isn't like I could be a chief of the Air Force. It's not the greatest thing I've ever done. Like, I've created life. I've made a family. I've established these connections with people. Like, that's what life's about. It's not about grinding yourself to the bone until you're on your deathbed. You're like, oh my God, who do I love? Who loves me? So a lot of that was put in perspective for me. And so when I had my son, going back to kind of present day, um, I always try to make sure that when I'm home with him, he goes to daycare like 5 hours a week, 5 hours a day now, until Riley's born. Then everyone's going to be together, no more daycare. And so when he's gone, I'm like, work. Yes. Mom time, work out, work, clean, ba, 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 ba. When he's home, I am present. I am a mom. I am not Wreaths by Nicole P. When he goes to bed, okay, answer some messages, Wreaths by Nicole P. But like when he's home, no answering messages, no getting sidetracked, all that kind of stuff. I really try to block it out to make it as
Right.
black and white as possible. And it kind of, it kind of helps me put things into perspective in a good way.
No, that makes sense. Like you're fencing your time so that like when you're working. And then, when you're mothering, like when, you're playing with your
Yeah.
son. When you're cooking. And like when yeah, it makes total sense. And especially makes sense because you're an Air Force veteran and you guys live and die by checklists and you also love to compartmentalize things. So
That's
you'll want to
that
be
was a
in.
yes, that was a big switch between the Marines and the Air Force. Holy cow. Oh my I was like, y'all are
Yeah.
real smart over here. Look
Yeah,
at
your
you
service
go.
branch is showing, Nicole. Your service branch is showing. No, I think
Yeah.
that's great. And then, I mean, I'm talk to me a little bit about the backup plan concept.
Yeah, so I for a long time just made wreaths as they came. And as they were ordered or whatever, made to order is what I like to say.
Right.
And I started doing a little more like farmers markety things last year, like holiday markets, just like October through December. And it worked out really well. But then I was like, oh, I have all these wreaths that are like pre-made. And I was like, why don't I just have like a pre-made section on my website? Like that's so silly. Like the ones you see behind me. So in preparation for baby girl, because the holiday season is like my busiest time, and she's due at the end of October. I'm cutting off all orders starting October 1st, and it's only on a message basis if, I know I have a little bit of time or something. Um, and I'm just trying to make as many wreaths as kind of humanly possible when I'm not filling orders for then. So at least I have something to sell for people that want them made. So I'm hoping that kind of fills the gap until our family is situated and I've got things a little more under control.
And like, not to give anything away, but we were also strategizing before we jumped on the phone call. So more to
Yeah.
come. Sure.
I've
But
got
no,
homework to do after this. Yeah.
yeah, that's how everybody leaves these calls like, oh God, she gave me homework.
Yeah.
But no, I really appreciate your transparency, about the challenges of balancing a career and family, because I think you touch on something which is so true, which is a successful career doesn't mean the same to everybody. For some people, it's like, I want to build a business that's going to scale to millions of dollars in a year. Or other people, it's like, I want a business that allows me to work when I want to work and, be here for my children, which is why I left the service, was so I could be here for my children. So I think that makes sense. I don't think that's something that we talk about enough, because I think everybody, like much to what you said earlier, everybody feels like the right answer for them when, they ask, how are you doing as business? Is, oh, I'm grinding all the time and I work 7 days a week and blah, blah. And I mean, I think we need to move away from that. And like, I appreciate you being transparent and saying, that's not life for me. Like, that is not my life. So how did you work around like the crazy mentality that, you have to grind, you have to work because, 24/7. And then how'd you work around that to find some ways to give yourself some grace and like help find that balance?
Um, I was that grind for a long time. I mean, you don't make 2,000 wreaths in 2.5 years without grinding, um, and so I was that person, and as we were talking about before the show, it did fulfill me because I like hearing the story. I love honoring veterans. I love hearing stories. This is like the coolest homemade gig I could ever think of, and I've made wreaths for World War I uniforms, World War II uniforms, up to recent day Gold Star families that passed away last month and stuff. And so I love doing it. But oh, I totally just got sidetracked. Oh, but the grind versus giving yourself grace. Honestly, I got burnt out. I like it was after, especially after having my kid and then trying to do the same things I was doing. I was like, um, I could just tell, like, emotionally, like, every little comment would get to me, and I have great reception. I've had, like, 10 bad comments ever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and the second one little bad thing happens, and I would kinda go off the rails, and, and my husband would kinda have to, like, be like, "Nicole, you need take a step back." No one's dying,
Your baby, though, those are your babies.
Yeah, I know, like, everything's fine. But it's funny because I used to be that person in the Air Force that said, "Nobody's dying right now. Like, we're good. Like, we can relax," So, yeah, just just kind of realizing, like, okay, either you can be burnt out and, like, start burning all your relationships by, like, being so infused in your business. You need because I think the hard thing too is, like, when I wasn't present when I needed when I wasn't working because I was just thinking about working. And, my husband and I, we have like our little TV time between 8 and 9 o'clock. And then I'd like be on my phone or we'd be talking about something and I'd see a message pop up and I'd grab my phone. And so now we have no phones in the kitchen living room area as our rule because like he used to do it too. It's not just me, but he would do it too. And and we would realize like as we're talking to each other, like we're not really listening to each other right now.
Mhm.
And that kind of stinks to like feel like you're not heard. Um and so yeah, we it was a lot of like honestly, I like thank my husband a lot because he really has grounded me. He's a lot more sensible. I'm a lot more off the cuff, like not think about things. Let's just do them. He's like, I never could have started a business like you did because I would have had to plan logistics for hours. He's like that guy. And so we really balance each other out. And so being able to just like verbalize things with him um has been really helpful to just kind of help ground me and like realize what I'm doing. I don't
I
know if I
love
didn't.
it, and I also love, like, you know, in all fairness, he might be more research oriented, but you were kind of like, you were kind of thrown in there because you just all of a sudden had this huge popularity. So you didn't really have a choice. You had to figure it out. And I think
Yeah.
that's why this next question, I was like, oh, I need to ask her this because you kind of just found yourself in a situation where you're like, you're gonna fly the airplane while you're building it, right? And
Yeah.
so what are the top three things? Oh, sorry, top three tips that you have learned from, like from the experience regarding like resources and the community that you've been exposed to that you want to share with military spouses? Like, what are the top three entrepreneurial resources and tips that you have for other military spouses?
Yeah. Am I allowed to use some of the answers that I told you?
Yeah,
On
absolutely.
the perfect. Okay, I didn't know if that was cheating.
Oh, not at
Yeah.
all.
So one of the thing, like one thing that like really, really, really sticks with me whenever anybody asks that question is believing in your product, but knowing that the public believes in your product um or service, whatever you're doing, right? Um I I kind of just learned this one recently, and then like kind of when I reflect back on my experiences, it's like very cut and paste. I was making these onesies, twosies, and I was like, this is cool. Who likes wreaths made out of military uniforms? Whatever. And then when I went viral, I was like, oh, wow, like
A lot of
everyone
people do.
likes these. Yeah. Not just mom and dad and uncle and friends and family and all this kind of stuff. Um, and I think that's a big thing is if you're willing to, take this dive and try to do something entrepreneurial, whatever. You need to know that the public believes in your product, not just mom and dad, because you're going to kind of get stuck. And um and honestly, and I think like even just being transparent about everything. On my Facebook page, I mean, I've been very transparent with you, right? And then on my Facebook page, my followers, I've got like 12,000 followers now. It's pretty dope. And uh they knew once I got pregnant. They knew when I had my son. They knew when my husband changed his MOS, or oh gosh, I just marine myself, AFSC. And 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 I even just by my interactions with the customers, it's not good morning, sir. How are you doing today?
They know
It's
they know the person behind the
yes.
um,
Yeah. And I think that's big. I think that's
yeah.
huge. Um, because especially with a small business, they don't want to deal with Amazon.com. That's the reason they didn't go to Amazon.com. Um, so I guess let me see, that's two, right? So public believing in your product, being really transparent. Um, and also just realize, especially as a military spouse, like a lot of resources are also available to you as are to veterans. Um, and that's something I kind of learned recently too, because after my wait list was finished, and I was like, okay, I gotta be like real business time now. And so I started going a little more like veterans Texas summits. I took some like online, like I did like a bunkers lab course. I did Warrior Rising. I think that one might be veterans only, but I know bunker labs
Oh,
is
I'm a graduate.
there you go. Yeah. Available for spouse. I did like the 8 week like female business owner course or whatever,
Yeah.
it was cool. And all these little things that really add up, that save you money. Hey, you don't have to pay to get an EIN. Learned that one the hard way. Things like that. um you know uh there's a lot of people out there trying to scam you if you don't know what you're doing, and I learned my lesson a few ways through that. But yeah, there's don't be afraid if to look at veteran resources and then just see if they have the tack on that says also
Most
applies to
possible.
spouses, because usually it does.
No, and that's a really great tip because we say that all the time, which is, and this is one area where, a lot of veteran spouses are always like, wait, they're always only for active duty spouses. But I'm like, in the case of entrepreneurship, a lot of the resources are also available to veteran spouses. So you're absolutely right. And, when we also, I know military spouses, as a matter of course, do not look at veteran resources because we're like, we don't want to take away a resource from a veteran. But you bring up a great point, which is that a lot of times people who offer resources for veterans also offer them to military spouses. They just don't know to add that to their advertising.
Right. And
You're
sometimes
not
you
taking
just
away
ask.
from a veteran. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
But we need
exactly.
a veteran you to tell us that we're not taking it away from you by using them.
No, I'm not offended. Yeah.
No. No, this has been great. And I mean, I love that. And I mean, I think you're absolutely right with the resources, and do as much as you can for free to learn as much as you can before you pay for something. And then IVMF is also a really great one.
Yes.
They're
Mhm.
wonderful. And and also the other resources that other people have brought up is SCORE, the retired executives, and then SBA. There's so many resources for entrepreneurs that it's an
Mm.
embarrassment of riches. You're absolutely right. So I feel like we could chat forever. And I know we chatted for quite a while before we came on because it was so much fun. But I mean, is there a question that I should have asked that I did not ask that speaks to your experience as an accidental entrepreneur?
Oh, no. I don't know. I think that was everything, how I was thrust into it, how you kind of figured it out. I guess, I don't know if it's a question, but like just don't be afraid to just ask people who have been through it before how to do it. You're not inconveniencing anybody by asking a question. And I was telling you before we started the show, I leaned a lot on some of my friends who had just opened up their own businesses in Texas, and it was one of the reasons I stayed afloat instead of sunk. So yeah, don't be afraid to um do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I love that, and I imagine when people reach out to you, you're like, "Yeah, I'll give you 5 minutes. What do you
Yeah,
need to know?" Yeah, I love
absolutely.
that. No, so that's the spirit of the military community, right, is we're all here to support one another, so I really appreciate you reiterating that. Apparently, I did not have enough caffeine today. Anyway, it's been really fun chatting with you, Nicole. I hope you stay in touch, and thank you so much to USA for making these conversations possible. And if you have a story to tell, we hope that you will fill out the application and get one of your own military spouse highlights. We would love to tell your story. So I'm going to give you an opportunity, Nicole, to say the very last word. And I mean, if you want to repeat what you just said, that was great about like, reaching out for resources, but anything you want to say?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, my business is Wreaths by Nicole P. I like to say every wreath tells a story. I like to handcraft them all, and I'm really honored to be able to honor so many veterans and their families. And I hope I can do so for anybody watching, or if anybody has any questions about how to run a business or start up a business in Texas or anything like that. Please feel free, DM me, message me. I've always got my phone on me, except when I'm
Perfect.
with my husband. Yeah.
Sure. Well, I think all of our information is in the highlights, so make sure you guys go back there and read that. Thanks so much, Nicole, for joining us, and you guys come back next week. We'll see you then. Bye, guys.